Hello, thank you. So I'm the other Brit. I hope my accent's as understandable as Dan's. So I created something called the Hero Forge. The reason I did that is some people collect stamps, some people collect fridge magnets. I collect heroes. So for the last 18 months, for one interview a week, I've been talking to a range of different people about the remarkable things they do. And I've noticed a pattern emerging with the more conversations I've had, and that's what I'm here to share with you today. There's one person who isn't on this slide who I wanted to mention briefly, and it's this lady, Michelle Verning. Some of you may know her. Michelle was with me at the Hero Roundtable in London this time last year. She didn't feel very well at that conference, thought she'd eaten something funny, and a couple of weeks later she was diagnosed with cancer. And for the last year, I've watched the most courageous journey I've seen of her coming back to health and sharing her journey with the other people in our community. So I want to dedicate my talk today to Michelle, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd join me in wishing her well as she moves towards full recovery. So please do so. So this is my working definition of a hero. It's very similar to some of the things you've heard before. And the word that I'd like to concentrate on today is the third word here, the word choice, or to choose, because I think that is the fundamental particle from which heroic service emerges. This is Wendy Addison. She's one of the people I interviewed for the podcast. Wendy made a choice. She saw corporate corruption in South Africa in the company that she was working in. She could have turned a blind eye, but she chose to be a whistleblower, to speak out. And heroism often comes with risk and sacrifice. In her case, she lost her job, she lost her home, she received death threats such that she and her family had to flee South Africa. And she was involved in legal battles for years and was finally vindicated, and the criminals were brought to justice. And now she chooses to continue those conversations and advocates for whistleblowing. This is Justin Wren. Justin was a mixed martial artist in the UFC, had an amazing career ahead of himself, and then he traveled to the Congo and met the pygmy peoples there. And he saw little children dying from dysentery and other waterborne diseases. And so he decided to turn his back on his own career and created something called Fight for the Forgotten, which is a non-profit foundation to dig wells to present potable water to the pygmies. And he saved thousands of lives. He contracted malaria 3 times himself, coming very close to death. He's been at gunpoint from militia, and he still goes out there and he's doing this work today. And the last example, this is Damon Cole, who's a police officer in Fort Worth, Texas. He spends his spare time when he's not serving the public as a police officer in dressing up in superhero costumes and visiting hospitals of really sick children and giving them hope and inspiration. And some of these kids are really unwell and they don't make it. And Damon attends every one of their funerals, and he says every time he goes, his heart's broken wide open again. But he chooses to suit up and to turn up. So in each of these cases, these people are making choices. And what I found that there's a common thread here, and it aligns with Viktor Frankl's statement, another survivor of Auschwitz, who says that each of us can have everything taken away from us except one thing, the last human freedom, which is the freedom to choose how we respond to any given set of circumstances. There's a gap between stimulus and response, and it's there, I think, where heroic service can take place. So I started looking for maybe a training methodology that would allow more of us to be able to make heroic choices when we are confronted with challenges. And I found one. I found a human operating system. It's cutting edge, and it will allow us to make wise and virtuous choices. Well, I say cutting edge. It's kind of 2,500 years old. And it begins with the Stoics in ancient Greece. I'd just be interested with a raise of hands. How many people here think they could name one Stoic philosopher? Okay, 2, 3, 4. If you say 5, I'm getting off the stage, you're coming up. Okay? I set that same question to the kids who I teach. I'm a high school teacher by day. And they named Zeno of Citium as the founder in 300 BC. Some of them named Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. But the person who won the prize for the best-known Stoic in my school was Dr. Spock. And I have a problem with this. Much as I love the Star Trek universe, this is something I think Gene Roddenberry didn't do terribly well, because this half-Vulcan, half-human science officer who's supposed to represent what Stoicism is all about doesn't really quite get there. Because Spock is forever repressing his emotions in his inner life. And that's not what the Stoics were all about. The Stoics said we should form wise relationship with our emotions. They said emotions are inevitable. We're going to feel them. But we should learn how to respond rather than just react to them. And that way we find choice. So at the heart of Stoicism is this idea of logos. And I think logos and heroism have a lot to do with each other. So logos is this underlying divine pattern that binds the universe. It's very much like the Force in Star Wars. And logos has this movement from disorder towards order, and from separation to connection, and from fear to love, which seems to me to be a pretty good fit for heroism. And the Stoics say that our purpose on this planet is to align ourselves with logos, to live in service to others, to make a difference. So with that in mind, I'd like to take you through an exercise that Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, a man who could have and do anything, did every single morning to allow himself to align with logos. You don't need to get up or do anything, but we are going to go on a journey together. Before we do that, I want you to just hold something in mind right now that for you is a barrier for you being in service of others. It might be fear, it might be self-doubt, it might be that you feel you don't have the equipment you need to achieve your objectives. And just think about that. And as you do so, I want you to imagine that you're floating up from your seat and you're looking down, and surrounding you are all of your friends and family. These are mine. And as you continue to drift upwards again, you start to see those people who are familiar to you. They might not be people you spend a lot of time with, but they're friendly faces, people that you have positive regard for. These are some of the students I teach, and I'm very proud of them. And this photograph was taken a few minutes after these guys walked barefoot across 10 meters of hot burning coals to raise money for Justin Wren's Fight for the Forgotten. We raised £3,000 on that day by walking a few feet across hot coals. And these guys are from 11 to 18. But we can't stay here. We've got a long journey to go. So we're going to float upwards further still to the strangers we don't know, to those people we brush shoulders with every day, but we don't know their story. And upwards again to the country. And then outwards to that little blue marble. Edgar Mitchell, astronaut, said that when he was in space, he looked on the planet and he had an instant global consciousness. He said that he had a profound sense of injustice of the state of the world, and that he felt a compulsion to do something about it. But we're not going to stay there. We're going to drift further up to the edges of the solar system, and then to the one spindle arm of the Milky Way galaxy, and then outwards again. This is the furthest we've ever seen into space. This was taken from the Hubble telescope. It's called the Deep Field View. There are 10,000 galaxies, all of them perhaps teeming with life in this image. And yet, if you took a drinking straw and you held it up and you looked at the night sky, that's how much of the universe you're looking at right now. You'd need 13 million of these images stacked side by side to capture the whole of the night sky. And that's just how far we can see with our instrumentation. And from that place, I want you to look back on yourself here in this theater and think about that thing that's stopping you from taking action. Because if you're anything like me, this exercise fills me with a combination of a sense of awe and fear. I feel very, very small, but also it makes me realize that all of the effort I'm making to gather more toys and to obsess about fame and fortune and reputation don't mean a thing. We're here for such a short time. None of us are getting out of this alive. We're soap bubbles on a river of creation. We're here just for a moment. And so with that in mind, that's the invitation to step into that space between stimulus and response and choose to make a difference. And there will be obstacles. There always are. But the Stoics say that's okay. They say that the obstacle is the way. The impediment to action is the thing we should be doing. And the fact that we've got boulders and ravines and challenges in our way, those are the things that allow us to rise to the occasion, to live a life of virtue. And they also say that we need to remember that control is not something that we have in many situations. This is a real historical reenactment of King Canute trying to hold back the tides. We have to be wise in our choices. We have to pick battles where we can make a difference, but also realize that even with the best of intentions, we may fail. And the Stoics say that's okay. It's okay to fail as long as you get up and you keep trying until you achieve your objective. This is James Stockdale, a captain in the Vietnam War. He'd read Epictetus in Stanford when he was studying there. And when his plane went down in 1965, he was heard saying over the radio, "I'm leaving the world of technology and entering the world of Epictetus." And he was held in prison for 7.5 years, 4 of them in solitary confinement. And he says that it was the study of Epictetus that allowed him to endure that experience. He said at his lowest ebb, when he was considering taking his own life, he came across a small rolled up piece of paper in the toilet that had been hidden by a fellow prisoner for him to find. And it was the last lines of the poem Invictus. "It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." That's basically what the Stoics have to tell us. And so my invitation to you is to think a little bit about what the Stoics teach, to bookend your day with Stoic philosophy. Begin by setting your intention, by being ready to answer the call. And then in your day-to-day life, think about the choices that are available to you and widen your circle of concern, and then stay the course when things get tough. And then if you're lucky enough to get to put your head on the pillow at night, then do so with gratitude and with humility, knowing that you might not wake up again. But if you do, you get to do this all over again. And if you do, you'll find that the life you're living is richer, and when you do come to the end of your life, you'll know that you made a difference with the time afforded to you, because this isn't ours, it's rented to us and rents to you every single day. So that's what I've learned in the last 12 to 18 months. But I know from the people I've met in the last few days here that I've got a lot more to learn still. And so I wanted to thank all of you for inviting me along, and hopefully I'll come and talk at another one of these. Thank you.
The Hero Roundtables are the global events that ask the question, what is a hero? You've just seen one hero talk. To find more and join the conversation, visit our website or social media.